This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Welcome, Talk Catholic, the website.com, your host, Tim Kilcoyne. No agendas here, just the straight and narrow, through Mary to Jesus, the Catholic faith proclaimed and preserved. Hope to see you here every week. TalkCatholic.com, Tim Kilcoyne. Oh my goodness, we're getting closer, aren't we? There's an election coming up. And what's going to determine whether we get it right or not? Well, hopefully not machines. And by the way, I know this is typically our Saint of the Month, Saturday, but I think all the saints would like me to focus on very specific topics for your decision-making next week. So I'd like to stay with the game plan of exposing the New World Order, communism, but by way of a different book called You Can Change the World by Father Jim Keller of the Christopher Movement. And we'll get back to our book review, likely after the election when we pray we have something to celebrate. But first I wanted to share a quick tidbit anecdotal from this past week as I got a haircut. And the attitude that I ran into was exactly what the communists are hoping for and planning on. The hairstylist had a lovely disposition, 30-ish, and last time I got my haircut, she mentioned a boyfriend, and so I asked about him, and she said, well, yeah, we're getting married in 2 weeks. And then I asked quickly the question, you going to be changing residence or sticking around or moving somewhere else? Oh, no, we've had a place for about 5 years now. Oh, really? I didn't say that, but I should have perhaps. I don't know whether she was Catholic or not. What I do know is that she represents an unbelievably popular mindset that cohabitation is no big deal. And I thought to myself, well, it was a big deal not too many decades ago anyway. It's a big deal under our Lord every day in all days. Cohabitation is wrong, ladies and gentlemen. And indeed, in our Catholic tradition, it is a sin. This is Catholic Church teaching, always has been. And there's a wonderful article from the Diocese of Charleston on the truth about cohabitation. And I was doing a little browsing of various articles. And one of the things that, two things hit me relative to the stats that you will come up with often. One being that 74% of Catholics don't have a problem with it. Well, then I thought to myself, 74% of Catholics don't believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, which is another way of saying 74% of Catholics are not catechized. They don't know their faith, which means they're not really believing and living their faith because they don't believe in the most central tenet of their faith, and thus they can't see regarding all other moral issues, including political. Yes, this is possible, and we call it today the diabolical disorientation. And so they got finger to the wind, and they haven't heard anything by way of the leadership on such issues, certainly not from the pulpit, not in my lifetime. And so, they're going to go with the winds of the world, I guess. It makes logical sense, doesn't it? And these are the same very people who have to choose to vote for the common good of our country and church. And again, sin has an escalating effect. You accept the little things, and then ever so gradually you accept the bigger atrocities, like same-sex marriage and redefining male and female, etc. And this is very much what has been going on with this whole concept of cohabitation. We gradually accepted it over decades. May we remember the great words of Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen. To paraphrase, if something is right, it's right always. And if there's only one person left believing it, that person is right, not all the others. And I would like to draw attention to one simple thing. You have heard me refer to in many shows in the last few years to the diabolical disorientation. We saw it on steroids with the beginning of the pandemic and the things that were taking place, and at that time with the mask and the vaccines and all. I don't want to go there. Really decent thinking people were making strange decisions. They couldn't see. Well, that's an example. And the cohabiter can't see either. The stats are pretty clear about the danger of cohabitation prior to marriage. There is a huge percentage towards divorce amongst those who cohabitate. I've seen stats upward to 70% have a greater chance of being divorced over those who waited till marriage. And just the abuse of children is much higher. I think I saw a stat of 170% higher of children born to parents in a cohabitating situation. Brutal. This is reality. But more importantly, I wanted to read from this article from the Diocese of Charleston. It's reason number 5 for not cohabitating. The statement by the skeptic would say, the church is just outdated and out of touch with its thinking in this matter. Birth control made those old rules obsolete. That's just not true. And this is from Kathy Schmoog, a director of Family Life in Charleston. She says, that's just not true. In the early days of the church, living together outside of marriage was common among the non-Christians in the Roman Empire, as was the use of artificial contraception. But these practices were devastating for individuals, families, and society. Women were treated as disposable objects, mere toys for sexual pleasure, to be discarded when passions waned. The Christian vision of marriage and family led to happiness and fulfillment for individuals and families and a great renewal of culture and society. Far from being outmoded, then as now, the church's teaching is revolutionary, and it works. The skeptic again asks, why does the church interfere in the sex lives of couples? Isn't it just a private matter between us? Kathy responds, sex is intensely private and personal, but it also has deep moral and social dimensions. Sex works as a primary bonding agent in families, and the family is the building block of society. Sexual rights and wrongs influence the health and happiness of individuals, families, and neighborhoods. That's why sexual behavior has always been the subject of many civil laws. The church, of course, wishes to safeguard the family and society, but more than that, the church wishes to safeguard your relationship with your future spouse and with God. Sex is the act that seals and renews the couple's marriage covenant before God. Sexual sins, then, are not just between a man and a woman, but between the couple and God. And that's the church's responsibility. Sex is not simply a private matter. If it's between you and God, it's between you and the church. You need to ask yourself, when do I stop being a Christian? When I close the bedroom door? When does my relationship with God cease to matter? The only place where this total self-giving between a man and woman is to take place is in marriage. It's the only place where children can be raised with the secure, committed love of a mother and father. So sexual intimacy belongs only in marriage. Outside of marriage, sex is a lie. The action says, I give you my whole self, but the man and woman are really holding back their commitment, their fertility, and their relationship with God. Before giving your body to another person, you need to give your whole life, and you need to receive your spouse's whole life in return, and that can only happen in marriage. This is basic Christian teaching, and there are stats that would say that evangelical Christians are way better than we are when given a survey of our thoughts on the matter. I guess that might be because they tend to be better schooled in the scriptures. Fornication is the word that our Lord is referring to in the scriptures, which is an umbrella, really, for all sexual perversion and deviation from the only context where sex works, which is marriage. One man, one woman, and not non-binary. I bring all of this up not as a new series in sexual ethics in the Catholic tradition, but because I think it has a huge impact on whether we get it right come the election. Because if we're not thinking straight in these matters, we're absolutely not going to think straight when we go into the voting booth regarding any matter, because it's not just about the economy. The economy is the way it is because something's happened to the family. We need to ask the question, as Kathy puts it well, about what's the building block of society? It's the family. Is the family being protected by our vote? That's it. Under God. I pray you'll make the right decision. And I always believe and always have believed that it goes to the heart of your understanding of human sexuality, commitment, marriage, and these other matters outside of marriage. You've got to get these right, or your mind will be lost and in a cloud, a kind of foggy, murky malaise of thinking where you just won't get it right. And you can't listen to your conscience because it's been deadened for too long. The woman who cut my hair was very nice, but she was morally wrong. And as I'm reminded of a Father of Mercy speaking to some seminarians, and they were kind of throwing it around the table, I wonder when the chastisement is coming. And the older priest said to the seminarians, gentlemen, the chastisement has been with us for quite some time now, when we began accepting mortal sin as no big deal. It's a big deal. All right, let us move on to hear from a maverick priest of the 1940s, Father James Keller, who founded the Christophers. He was a radio television personality in the spirit of Archbishop Sheen, no doubt. And he wrote this just one spectacular book called You Can Change the World. And as I read from this, you're gonna think he's talking about today for sure. So let's start. He says, make no mistake about it. We are at the crossroads of civilization. We stand on the brink of the greatest peace the world has ever enjoyed, or the most terrible nightmare of misery and chaos that mankind has ever known. The issue is clear and narrows down to what is truth with regard to the human being. If he is not a creature of God and the noblest act of God with rights from him, then he is just a clod of the earth and the merest tool of the almighty state. He must be one or the other. He cannot be both. Karl Marx, the arch-prophet of communism, in his Das Kapital, expressed this fundamental point most clearly. The democratic concept of man is false because it is Christian. The democratic concept holds that each man is a sovereign being. This is the illusion, dream, and postulate of Christianity. In this, Marx was one with Adolf Hitler. In fact, Hitler took much of the Marxian philosophy and integrated it into his Nazi doctrine, voicing the same complete disregard for the sacred worth of the individual. Here are Hitler's own words. Quote, to the Christian doctrine of the infinite significance of the human soul, I oppose with icy clarity the saving doctrine of the nothingness and insignificance of the human being. Quote unquote. Thus, both Marx and Hitler testified that democracy depends on Christianity. They realized that to destroy all forms of democratic government, the godless must discredit and eventually exterminate Christianity. Father says, and this was written 1948 is the copyright, right after World War II. And again, it sounds just like it was yesterday. Our problems have become magnified as the earth has shrunk, he says, in proportion to the advances of modern science with its jet-propelled planes faster than the speed of sound and its atom bomb, which can level all humanity to the common denominator of a lifeless pulp. But great as these problems are, perhaps the most formidable problem of all, which we have failed so far to solve, is represented by the force of a group of men banded together to eliminate God from the face of the earth. The greatest obstacle to our finding a solution to this problem, as well as to most others, is the apathy, which comes from our lack of understanding of what we followers of Christ have, the salvation of the world, in our hands. Far too many people are deluded into believing that we are living in a brave new world where everything is different and values, human values, are just not what they used to be. Let's not fool ourselves. It is still the same old world. Conditions have changed drastically. Still, we are fundamentally the same. The world will never be more than we are. What a great quote that is. The world will never be more than we are. If the world is in bad shape, it's because too many of us are in bad condition. Thus, the reason for my starting the show about my little soliloquy on cohabitation. Many people are inclined to think once communism is on the wane all over the globe, remember, right after World War II, I'm sure they were thinking this, mankind will settle back automatically to an era of peace. Most emphatically, that cannot be true. Even if communism were to disappear overnight, which it most certainly will not, The situation which makes all forms of totalitarianism possible still remains. And not only does it remain, it grows steadily worse. Those who fall for the attractive deceptions of the materialists, the communists, are not merely those who are economically insecure, oddly enough. In far greater numbers, they are those who have no spiritual moorings, no fixed beliefs in the fatherhood of God and the dignity of man. In the United States alone, according to one prominent government official, the communists, while numbering less than 100,000 card-carrying party members, have in tow about 5 million fellow travelers and sympathizers. And significantly, many of these are middle-class well-to-do. You know, the elites. Confused with little idea of true values, they are like immature children who fall for the glib half-truths of the kidnapper. Oh, why is my mind drifting back to the beginning of the pandemic and how the elites imposed their ways upon all of us while they took their own liberties? As history revolves, round and round she goes. It is the hope and dream of the communists to build this 5 million into 12 or 15 million and then to revolutionize this country out of its present democratic form of government. As time goes on, even the most elementary truths will fade into the hidden background as more and more people come to stand for less and less. Most are against communism now, just as they were against Nazism and fascism. But they don't know what they're for. They talk vaguely about the free way of life and the need for democracy, yet most of them have only a faint idea of the cause which makes these effects possible. It is only a matter of time before our nation will collapse, more from deterioration from within than any force without. But it is not too late for America, he says. This is what took place in Germany, but thank God in the United States it is not too late to reverse this trend. It is not too late to do something about it. Let's hear more from Father James Keller of the Christophers on the other side. This is WQPH Radio 89.3 FM. It is a truism that God is sometimes closest when he seems so far away. The song You Are Near by Kitty Cleveland.
Yahweh, I know you are near, standing always at my side. You guide me from the fall, and you lead me in ways everlasting. Lord, you have searched my heart, and you know when I sit and when I stand. Your hand is upon me, protecting me from death, keeping me from harm. Yahweh, I know you are near, standing always at my side. You guard me from the fall, and you lead me in ways everlasting. Where can I run from your love? If I climb to the heavens, you are there. If I fly to the sunrise or sail beyond the sea, still I'd find you there.
Before we go on, you can certainly hear the parallels to our time. We're basically seeing the cause and effect of our freedoms collapsing have more to do with what is coming out of us, our heart. Why did I start the show talking about cohabitation and the la-di-da attitude by most Americans? You see, we have to get these things correct if we're going to see and be able to self-sacrifice for the other, for the future, which is how freedoms are bought and won and preserved. And as Reagan once said in a famous speech, we're only one generation away from losing our freedom. And communism, as Father Keller is describing, is very much like a virus. And it just won't go away because it's evil and it's thriving on human nature's weakness to want to become fat and happy without sacrifice. And I'm thinking of LifeSite News in a segment John Henry Weston was referring to the non-Catholic, but very much Catholic in wisdom, Jordan Peterson, as he was detailing the importance of sacrifice and drawing its parallels to our Mass and its connection to family and its connection to work and its connection to freedom. And this is how our country prospered and found peace and a standard of living absolutely second to none worldwide. And if we lose those spiritual moorings, as he points out, then indeed, we're no different than any other civilization in human history. They all came and went. Most of them literally after about 200 years, okay? But maybe God has something special for us because as we go, so will go the world. Likely to the Antichrist. Father Keller continues, it seems safe to say that less than 1% of the American people are set on the destruction of our country. Can we say that that's about 5% today? A little more maybe. The overwhelming majority of the people are really good people. It's just the elites and the money that they have to corrupt in buying off good people that allows them to have the kind of power that they have. But they do not have the numbers. Don't ever believe that. Furthermore, there is little danger, he says, of exaggeration in saying that every one of this tiny minority has a militant hatred of the immutable truth on which our nation is founded, that man is a child of God and endowed by his Creator with certain unalienable rights. Also, you will invariably find, once you investigate, that practically all of this minority are in key spots where they pass on their hatred not to a few, but to the mass of the people. This is so because those who have an active hatred of God are missionaries at heart and are never content to keep that hatred to themselves. They strive incessantly to pass it on into the bloodstream of our national life, defiling the minds and hearts of everyone they can reach with their foul ideas. Ever on the job, they use every possible medium: education, government, labor, press, radio, movies, comic strips, magazines, books, and countless other channels to further their purpose. They are in a race for man's soul. Their program is well organized, unusually efficient, remarkably aggressive. They mingle with the people, they speak their language, they outsmart all others with their well-thought-out techniques and formulas of approach. Admittedly, it is difficult for many to resist their beguiling invitations and the honeyed promises they offer, but seldom, if ever, fulfill. Can we quickly say the deep state, the deep church? Acknowledging all of this, it is still simple to correct such a condition. One of the best ways to cure a starving patient is to build him up with good, nourishing food. The best way to cure this disease in our society is to build up society itself with good ideas and ideals and to eliminate those which are evil. Our responsibility to our fellow men in this respect is tremendous. Christ has put in our hands the divine medicinal power, the restorative power of love. Ours is the mission to bring that love to all mankind, to go to all men and to all nations. There is no substitute, no shortcut. Those who have a burning love of God and of man, not merely of self, will go to the greatest lengths to put that brotherhood into practice. They will suffer everything to share that love with all mankind. The strength of American life is rooted in Christian truth. One more time on that one. The strength of American life is rooted in Christian truth. The first Americans acknowledged this, but with few exceptions, they were men of deep and reverent faith in the supernatural. They did not have mere attitudes. Whatever else their defects may have been, the Puritans, like other early settlers of our country, did live Christian lives. They believed in 1, the existence of a personal God who has spoken to the world. 2, Jesus Christ, true God and true man. 3, the 10 Commandments. 4, the sacred character of the individual. 5, the sanctity of the lifelong marriage bond. 6, the sanctity of the home as the basic unit of the whole human family. 7, the human rights of every person is coming from God, not the state. 8. The right, based on human nature, to possess private property with its consequent obligation to society. 9. Due respect for domestic, civil, and religious authority. 10. Judgment after death. And he refers to before the Declaration of Independence was signed, it was already just a way of life in the field of education alone. He says 140 years before the signing of that Declaration of Independence, the motto of Harvard University was "For the glory of Christ, in Christi gloriam." And then school's first president, Master Dunster, made the comment, "Christ is the only foundation of all sound knowledge and learning." These early Americans set the pace in acknowledging the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, and what was good enough for them should at least represent the minimum good for us. And those founding fathers, indeed, took pains to write, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," our Declaration of Independence. And again, quoting from the same document, "To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed." The founding fathers, you see, were most explicit. They were God-fearing men. For them, the idea of God had to be integrated with everything if men were not to forget that their rights, liberties, and life itself come from their Creator. They must have feared that in the years ahead, those who would destroy America might subtly deny this truth. It was in this form, with two pointed references to God, that the Declaration was submitted to Congress. But Father points out that this was not a new doctrine. The Founding Fathers knew well it had come down through the long centuries, that for thousands of years, despite persecution, defection, and obstacles of every sort, the Jews had kept alive the sublime concept that man has an eternal destiny, that he derives his rights from his Creator, and that because of this, he has solemn obligations to his fellow men, in each of whom he should see a child of God. And hear this loudly. Is it any wonder that the godless have taken on the job of rewriting American history to fit the doctrines of Karl Marx? Oh, how long has this been going on in your local public school? Don't believe the lie. The mass of the American people don't believe it, but too many of us are lulled into a conviction that the problem will take care of itself. It will not, and it cannot. The only answer is to have more and more bearers of the truth, especially in those phases of life which, for better or worse, fashion the destinies of men: education, government, labor, and communications. Put enough people who are fighters for the truth in each of those fields, and the rest will take care of itself. Oh, what an endorsement for this radio station. WQPH Radio 89.3 FM, bearers of the truth. Indeed we are, giving you a little more about what you can do to change the world next week. God bless. Let your light shine. That is what it's all about here at WQPH Radio 89.3 FM. But we need to hear your story. You want your voice to be his voice. That is making the faith known to others. Please, my number is 877-625-3727. Tim Kilcoyne, TalkCatholic.com. Say, Mother Teresa told us, your ministry is your work right where you are. Grab on to this microphone. God bless.